It's not about do they work or don't they work. It's about how do we best position them so that ultimately we're improving health outcomes in horses. That's really what this is about. And I think number one, don't forget to involve your vet.
Mhm.
Right? That comes before anything because we're
It
not.
should be a team approach.
Absolutely. It should be a team approach. And I'm not suggesting that all vets are experts in nutraceutical products. Many vets are not experts in nutraceutical products, but vets are experts in equine health.
Mhm.
So any decisions that are made in the kind of the long-term health of your horse, I think any responsible horse owner must consider the vet as a critical part of that equation.
Hello, and welcome to another special equine edition of the Pet Food Science Podcast, where we explore science and strategies in equine nutrition. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Rankovich, and today we're exploring the fascinating and maybe sometimes controversial topic of nutraceuticals and equine nutrition, and specifically their implications for joint and gastric health. Joining me as a guest today is Dr. Wendy Pearson. She is an associate professor of equine physiology in the Department of Animal Biosciences at the University of Guelph. Dr. Pearson has an extensive background in nutritional and biomedical toxicology with a research focus on understanding inflammatory conditions affecting horses and their prevention by targeted nutrition. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Pearson.
Thank you so much.
I'm really excited to have you here today and have this opportunity to chat with you. And so for the audience, not only do Dr. Pearson and I work together in the same department, and we've collaborated now on a couple things, but I was also very lucky to have her as a lecturer in undergrad. And I had the opportunity to be her teaching assistant a few times in grad school too. So I think that you being at Guelph and those opportunities and experiences I had, thanks to you, really opened some doors for me. And not sure if I'd be sitting here today if we didn't have you at Guelph. So yeah, thank you so much. This is a really special episode for me. So I've already given a little bit of an introduction into who you are and what you do, but maybe you could introduce yourself further to our audience and share a bit more about your background and what led you down this path of studying equine physiology and researching nutraceuticals.
Sure. Thanks, Alex. And thank you so much for the invitation to come and join this. It's always a lot of fun to, kind of look back a little bit and reflect on kind of where we've been and ultimately where we're going. And, where we've been has been, there's been some ups and downs, right? When I first started doing research in nutraceuticals in horses was way back in 1997. So at that time, I had just come back to Canada from New Zealand, and I was galloping thoroughbreds at Woodbine Racetrack to earn a living, which has its moments.
Very different from what you do now, yeah.
Pretty different from what I do now. Ton of fun. Back then you're young enough that you're quite convinced you're not mortal, so you can do whatever you want. Nevertheless, I was mortal and was not a particularly good rider, as it turns out. So I came to the University of Guelph to do actually a master's degree. And through a series of happy accidents, I ended up at the Equine Research Center, where completely unbidden, I was offered a job. And this job was to do a 6-month contract to evaluate a herbal product in horses with arthritis. Now, you have to think back too, Alex. I mean, you're young enough to know that 1997 was a long time ago. And back at that time, nutraceuticals and herbal products for horses really weren't a thing. It was these sort of fringe, slightly kooky people that were putting herbs into their products. It certainly wasn't mainstream by any stretch of the imagination. So to come in at that ground level at the time, I didn't even have a bachelor's degree. I had one course left to finish my bachelor's degree. So to be offered an opportunity like that, and I credit that 100% to Dr. Andrew Clark, who was the director of the Equine Research Center back then. And I don't know to this day why he decided to hire me. I can only imagine it was just right place at the right time. But it completely changed my life. And to be able to see that progression from herbal and nutraceutical supplements really just kind of not being a thing, to go through this transition to now it's really mainstream. It's very unusual to go into a barn and not see any supplements anywhere. It's now commonplace, even to the extent I would argue that, many people are almost thinking, well, I should be feeding something, surely,
Mhm.
right? So it's not even the need that drives the purchase now. Now it's more like, okay, I got to buy something. So what should I buy?
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's a complete change around in terms of the not only the motivation to provide nutraceuticals for horses, but also the availability of nutraceuticals for horses went from really just kind of the bottom shelf way at the back. You could probably find something if you had good knees and you could get down there. But to now, I mean, there are literally half of a tack shop is dedicated to supplements of every shape and size from every conceivable ailment you could think of. There's a product for that. So it's been a very interesting journey.
Kemin Nutraceutics is compelled to provide safe and delicious ingredients to improve our pets' food so they can have the best quality of life. Every day, they deliver specialized expertise, innovative products, and unrivaled support through the pet food and rendering value chain. From oxidation control and food safety to palatability and nutrition, all the way through a suite of tailored services that support you from start to finish, we ensure you're getting the most from Kemin ingredients. Kemin is compelled by curiosity to ensure pets around the world are living happy and healthy lives.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating to hear. I don't think I knew that about. I guess I knew you had sort of a life before you came to Guelph, but I didn't realize how little, I guess, you had that experience until you were hired on. And yeah, it's fascinating because obviously that opportunity that was given to you, you've then been able to share that and give so many other students opportunities through your research and your work. So yeah, it's just really, really fascinating. And I completely agree with you about the nutraceuticals and the supplements, and that's something that we'll get into now because you walk into a tack store and there's just shelves and shelves and shelves of different products, and you open your social media and there's advertisements and people talking about, oh, do you use this or who uses that, or no, I feed this. And I think it can get really confusing to owners, and there's this expectation that maybe you do have to feed them, or maybe you're a bad owner if you aren't providing something to your horse. Um, but in terms of use, do we know just how popular they are? Are there any numbers related to their use and their prevalence by horse people?
Are there numbers? There are numbers. How accurately they reflect what's actually happening is another story. And there haven't been recent numbers to my knowledge. But certainly in terms of are horse owners adding something? Most statistics will tell you 8 out of 10 horse owners are adding something to their horse's diet, be that electrolytes, nutraceuticals, vitamins, whatever. 8 out of 10. So that's to all intent and purpose, that's everybody.
Yeah. And that's regionally, like globally, it's that same sort of trend, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the European countries, they've taken a little bit of a different approach than North America. And I'm not saying that one is superior over the other, but certainly from a regulatory perspective, the European products, I would argue, have a much more rigorous approval process than North Americans do. Um, but again, those are different markets. But if you look at, again, the kind of the numbers in terms of horse owner engagement with these types of products, I think the numbers are going to be pretty similar.
Right. And so do we know what the top reasons are that people are adding these products to their horses? What are they trying to get out of it by adding it to their horse's diet?
Um, yeah, there was a study actually published. It came out of the UK back in, I'm going to say, like 2016. So this is getting a little bit dated now, but that was a really cool study because it was a survey looking at top level, so elite level endurance riders and elite level dressage riders. And it was essentially a survey that said, hey, what are the most important health issues that your horse faces?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to forget the details here, but I'm going to say the dressage riders, they were mostly worried about stamina and energy. I'm going to get that totally wrong. But the second most important one was joint products and lameness, whereas in the I don't even know why I remember this stuff. It's a paper I read a decade ago.
Okay,
Nevertheless,
we're glad that you do.
so the eventers were more worried about electrolytes, and then joint health issues were kind of in there as well. Now, the reason I bring that one up is because in both of those elite rider groups, neither one of them said that joint health products, or joint health, I should say, was the most important issue. But then when they were asked, what are the products that you buy? Number one was joint health.
Oh, interesting.
So it's really kind of interesting, right? It raises that question. Well, what is it that actually motivates people to go and buy a product? Because this paper would suggest it's actually not what the most important issue is that that horse is facing necessarily.
Yeah, whether it's availability.
What's going on here? Are we talking about, is it just because the availability of joint care products is so prevalent? And I would argue that's probably a pretty big reason. But the other reason, I think, is that, I think there's a general understanding with horse owners that at some point in your horse's life, that horse is going to experience lameness and probably some sort of degenerative joint disease. And so the marketing machine that really promotes nutraceutical products for joint health as a way to delay onset of arthritis and degenerative joint disease, boy, they have done a fantastic job.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's really no lack of products if you are looking to add something, if joint health is a concern.
Yeah. So, I think in terms of, what is it that motivates people to buy? I think product availability is one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other reason is because there are some conditions that horses experience for which we do not have a drug cure. Arthritis is a perfect example. Now, I think any of us who owns horses probably have it in the back of our mind, okay, arthritis is going to be a thing at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, the vet is going to say, yes, really sorry, your horse has arthritis. So therefore, here's the medications we can give you that will help manage clinical signs. There is nothing the vet is going to give you that's going to say, oh, look at that, your horse is better. So I think that's another kind of a motivator for a lot of these different types of products, is they fill a gap, I think, that veterinary medicine has not yet been able to fill. And I'm not saying that is a good thing, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the real challenges we have with nutraceutical products is that in many cases, it takes control of the health of the horse away from the healthcare professional. It puts owners in a position where, most of them are pretty smart, right? They can navigate Google, they can navigate Chat GPT and all these other
Yeah,
fancy
so much information now available to us.
right? And so in a way, it gives us this false sense of being able to diagnose and treat disorders without necessarily involving the vet. That is a serious problem.
Yeah.
Now, it's one thing if you're feeding something that is relatively benign, that's not necessarily going to cause your horse any problems, and the worst thing that can happen is you're just going to waste your money. That's one scenario. But there are other scenarios where you could be delaying really important treatment for that horse, and that's basically an indirect toxicity of those products, right? Is that they can, in some cases, at least temporarily, replace professional veterinary care, and that is a serious problem.
Yeah, I agree. And I think sometimes some of the claims that are maybe made with some of these products give owners too much hope around what their horse might get out of that product. Like, I remember seeing a product that was advertising on their website that it would delay euthanasia. And you're like, if an owner is buying that, thinking that, that's terrible, right? Because that's likely not to be the case. I don't remember what the product was, and it doesn't matter, but it's just another one of those things to think about. So you had already kind of spoken a little bit to nutraceuticals and kind of traditional medicine as well. So what roles do you think that nutraceuticals can play specifically when it comes to joint health?
I think, that's I like the way you worded that question, Alex, because it's not about do they work or don't they work. It's about how do we best position them so that ultimately we're improving health outcomes in horses. That's really what this is about. And I think number one, well, there's a bunch of number ones, if I'm being honest. Number one, don't forget to involve your vet.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That comes before anything, because we're
It
not.
should be a team approach.
Absolutely. It should be a team approach. And I'm not suggesting that all vets are experts in nutraceutical products. Many vets are not experts in nutraceutical products, but vets are experts in equine health.
Mm-hmm.
So any decisions that are made in the kind of the long-term health of your horse, I think any responsible horse owner must consider the vet as a critical part of that equation. So that's number one. Second number one is, when you're out, I mean, these products are not cheap, right?
No, my
It
gosh.
takes no effort at all to drop $180 before you really, you walk out with one jug and you're $200, less well off,
And that might even be lucky. Some of them, like for a jug, like
right? Yeah,
several $100s.
these products are not cheap. So really set yourself up for success here. And the vast majority, and by the vast majority, I'm going to throw a completely wild number out there. I'm going to say 95% of products out there are produced by companies who do not do research on their products. And it's one of my pet peeves. Obviously, I'm a science geek. I really believe in science. And to see an entire industry predicated on the promise of science, but without the substance of science.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all you have to do is turn on your computer and you can see, science-based this and science that. And there's this, science sells kind of mentality. But if you peel away even just the most superficial veneer, you find that most companies, and by most companies, I say almost all companies, don't actually do research on their products. Some of them may use research that other companies have done or scientists have done on individual ingredients to formulate their products. There are some problems with that. But the vast majority have not done research. However, some do. And I can tell you this for a certain fact. If a company has just spent $180,000 on a research study to evaluate their product, they will be more than happy to share that with you. So don't be afraid to ask the question. You're looking at a product and it's got this nice label and science-y, whatever. Ask the question. Pick up the phone. Say, hey, look, I'm really interested in your science-based product. Can you please let me know where I can find the research paper that shows that this has been studied? Right? You're going to find yourself really darn quick putting the phone down on a lot of people, because most of them don't have those studies it's not that they overtly say they have, but they imply that they have.
Absolutely. Or they have science in their name, right? Which makes it
Right?
even more confusing for people.
Exactly. So all of that to say, arm yourself, the horse owner, arm yourself with the information you need to make a rational, informed decision, right? Ask about research and support those companies that do the research, because I'll tell you what, research is expensive. And when these companies go and they do these studies, they now have to sell that product that they've just spent multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to evaluate. They got to put it on a shelf right next to a product that's had no research done on it at all. And they have to be price competitive.
Absolutely.
So imagine that, right? Like as a horse owner, you need to be going in there and saying, okay, this product is maybe a little bit more expensive, but I did my homework and this company does research. So I'm going to buy this one. Because do you know how long it would take, Alex, how little time it would take before the economic consciousness catches on to that?
Yeah, I agree.
And then this whole paradigm change happens where companies are like, if I'm going to be competitive in this space, I'm going to have to start doing research on my products. Imagine a world we'd live in then, right? Now, okay, maybe we have all of these wonderful products, but they would actually have science behind them. So better for the consumer and far better for the horse.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a horse owner, why wouldn't you want to, put your hard-earned money towards a product that does have some science and that could actually be giving you the results that you're looking for? So I completely agree with you. So unfortunately, I think we can't go quite through all the different products that you've studied and all the different nutraceuticals. But when we're thinking about joint health, and when we're thinking about some of those nutraceuticals in that space, are there any that really jump out at you as having evidence behind them? Or are there ones that you see all over the shelves that maybe don't quite have the same research or the same benefits?
Believe it or not, that's a really loaded question.
I know it is.
I mean, I can speak to research that I've seen out there in science land, and obviously research that myself and my grad students have done. So there are some products that are out there that do have good science behind them, right? So there's a company called Interpath, and they produce a product called Foresight. And that product was actually part of my PhD work back 10,000 years ago. That company was they were real innovators at the time, because again, back then, I mean, we're talking in the late 90s, early 2000s. At that time, nutraceuticals wasn't really a huge thing. And boy, that battery of research that they did, that was a huge financial risk for that company. And so that product has been, it's not sold so much in Canada to my knowledge. I know it is here. It was huge in Australia, which this company is an Australian company. And I know that they're in various countries around the world, including Canada. But that's one product that I'm pretty confident in saying you're going to have some sort of, or at least the research suggests you should have some sort of benefit from that product.
Yeah, and I think that's the one I usually hear vets recommending too, at least in Ontario. But I didn't know that was the product that you had done your research on. I've just heard, good things about it from different people.
Yeah, so that's one. Another one is, so that was kind of one way back in the past. One that's more recent, we recently finished a couple of research projects for a company called Southern Equine Distributing. And they have a vet-only product that's called Structured Joint. That publication actually just got published a month ago. And so that product seems to have some real benefit in terms of adapting tissues to exercise stress. Mm-hmm. So that one is a little bit different in that it's not necessarily an arthritis type product, but it is based on the data that we generated. It looks like the way it's really helping support cartilage health is by preventing degeneration and also facilitating adaptation of tissues to exercise stress.
Very cool.
So that's another really interesting, very kind of a focused product. I've done some research on quite a few products from a company called Herbs for Horses. They were actually my first research client in 1997. So that tells you, again, the kind of culture that company has fostered over the last almost 30 years, right? Even way back then, they were absolutely single-minded in their commitment to being a company that puts science behind their products. And so we've done research on their High Care product, which performed extremely well in terms of supporting cartilage metabolism when cartilage is under inflammation stress. So that's one, again, I think that's positioned really well for almost like a preventive to delay onset of cartilage problems, and really to support long-term cartilage health.
Yeah, I think that that point that you just made leads me into sort of another question that I hear very often is when it comes to these joint supplements, I think owners don't know when to start. Some of them, might have a 3-year-old who's starting work and they're like, well, do I just start now? Because I know one day, this horse might have arthritis and maybe it'll prevent something. Or some don't know whether to wait until they do see symptoms to add something in addition to maybe a more traditional therapy. So what do you kind of say to that? What is usually your recommendation when people are looking to add something that'll maybe support joint health for their horses?
Yeah, so the really, really unsatisfying answer to that is it depends. Right? If you've got a horse that, I should backtrack. A supplement is not going to do anything to fix an imbalanced diet.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
Point number one, make sure your horse is getting a balanced diet that is designed around the activity level and the sort of stage in life that the horse is at. So that trumps everything. So beyond that, now if you've got a horse that's in, extremely high levels of work, you know, that would be perhaps a role for example, this structure joint product that's uniquely designed and evaluated for that purpose, right? So whereas if you've got an aging, mid-teens type horse that's doing some activity, I think it's fairly, if you want to maintain that horse's activity level, kind of, then that would be maybe the time I would start with something like the Heil Care, for example, or the Foresight. Foresight is it's a really interesting product because one of the outcomes that we saw in the studies we did is it actually causes the cells in joints that create the cartilage matrix. It causes those cells to divide, which is really difficult to do. These cells are notoriously unprolific. They really don't like to divide, which is one of the reasons why once arthritis starts, it kind of ends up being a bit of a slippery slope and you just kind of have a one-way direction to arthritis. But if you can actually get chondrocytes, the cells in cartilage, to divide, then that's a pretty unique way of, again, trying to delay onset of cartilage problems. So, there's no real good answer for that question, unfortunately. It depends. If you've got a couch potato who's a bit of a weekend warrior, and is again one of the older type horses, my personal feeling, and I say this as a nutraceuticals researcher, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If you start to see changes and you start to see kind of the early stages of a declining cartilage health, sure, okay, then go out there, do your homework, find a product that's been researched, and start using that. But to indiscriminately just put nutraceuticals into these horses when really there's nothing wrong and they're not really doing much, I think is a success of marketing.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of that, which makes it, so we had already talked about this, right? Difficult to separate the marketing from the science. And then I think some horse owners feel guilt too if they're not buying these products and giving them to their horses. Because we all love our horses, right? And we want to do best by them. So we talked about joint health, but you've also done a lot of work when it comes to gastric health as well. Did you want to speak to that a little bit? And if there's any products or nutraceuticals that you think have a role in that space?
Yeah, so we've actually done quite a bit of work in gastric health. I had a recent PhD student who had a real interest in probiotics and prebiotics. So that research was funded, that we had an industry partner for that. Again, that was the Herbs for Horses company. And they put in quite a bit of money to evaluate their ProBio Plus product. So we did some in vitro work with that, as well as some work in racehorses, and found that by adding the ProBio Plus to the diet of racing horse, so we were using racing standard breds, and we gave these standard breds antibiotics. And what we wanted to see is when we give these antibiotics, does that actually compromise the GI tract, and can we support that by adding in the ProBio Plus? So we got some really nice research papers out of that. And the short answer is yes, it does have that effect. So, and to my knowledge, that's the only probiotic product available in Canada for horses that's been actually independently tested.
Oh, interesting.
So really, really neat research there. We also did some research for a company out in BC. This is a company called G's Organic Solutions. And that project, we did that, back in sort of maybe, I'm going to say around 2016, somewhere around there. So probably 10 years ago now. But there we were looking at, it's actually an interesting product. It's based on, well, you could look it up. I actually forget the ingredients, but basically what it did is it was looking at improving gastric health from the perspective of regulating, or I should say modulating, gastrointestinal transit time. So this one's a little bit tricky because I don't want to go out there saying, a product like this will prevent colic by regulating transit time. But certainly some of the data that we got suggested that there are some parts of the GI tract that were quite markedly affected by this product, mainly by altering production of hormones that regulate transit time in individual parts of the GI tract. So that's, again, a small business that really put their money where their mouth is in terms of, putting science behind the products that they're selling. So that was another one that we did. Now, the danger of going down this road is that I forget some.
No, that's okay. And it just gives people a reason to have to look up your work, which we're going to have to share all your different websites and LinkedIn's and research dates and everything at the end of this.
Yeah. So there's one more I do want to mention, and that was one that we actually finished a couple of years ago. My master's student, Melissa McGilloway, did really nice work looking at the effect of, it was actually a prebiotic that was based on a fermentation product of aspergillus. So it's like a fungi or mushroom. And boy, that product was absolutely outstanding in preventing stress-induced leaky gut in horses. Absolutely, just mind-blowingly good. So to my knowledge, that product isn't available in Canada, but the company's based out of the US. And boy, that was a really, really awesome couple of research studies that came out.
Yeah, I remember Melissa doing that one. And yeah, I remember was that around COVID, right before COVID? Somewhere around there, right?
It would have been around there. Yeah, it would have been around COVID. But so we had all kinds of other complications because of COVID to get those studies done. But the data were outstanding.
That's great. And it's you kind of spoke already to a couple of products that have, different benefits and potentially different roles, like, giving antibiotics. This one might have benefits for this, or if you are transporting your horse, right, maybe there's a role for this product here. So I think that's great, because I think people maybe sometimes forget that, every horse is a little bit different and what they experience is different, and the benefits that they might gain from these different products might be different too. So we've talked about a lot of different products and different supplements and what consumers should look for in a nutraceutical if they are looking to buy one. But could you speak to maybe the regulation around these products in the industry? Do we have safeguards that ensure effectiveness or safety?
The short answer is yes. But it's not quite that simple. We do have a program in Canada that's called the Veterinary Health Products Program, and it's administered through Health Canada. And companies that are selling products are required to notify these products through Health Canada. The reason I say it's a little bit of a complex answer is when you notify a product, there is absolutely no requirement for companies to do research on safety or on efficacy. So what they have to do is there are only certain ingredients that are allowed. So as long as the ingredients are on the kind of the blessed list, and then those ingredients need to be presented at a inclusion rate that is, there is no evidence of lack of safety, then those products are allowed to be sold. So I mean, I don't want to dismiss it. I don't want to sound dismissive. It's a good program. It's much better than what we would have had certainly back in the 90s when I started doing research on this. There was no regulations at all around these products. So I think we've had a really positive evolution in terms of the regulatory side of things. But it still leaves a lot of the kind of the homework up to the horse owner in terms of really finding products that have been evaluated and so that gives you a little bit more information about how they actually apply to your horse's health.
Yeah, and I think you of course we've touched on companies actually doing research on their products too, and so you had also kind of touched on consumers being aware of companies that haven't done their own research but are maybe using research or ingredients that have some kind of research behind them, maybe not even in horses, right? Because that happens too, where it might not even be horses. And then the dosing too, I think, is another thing that consumers maybe aren't always aware of, is that dose is just as important. So that's something that they need to be asking questions about as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've been in the nutraceutical space for a really long time now. So I don't want to say really long, for an adequate amount of time.
Well, you're right, it's really long.
A good amount of time. Is there anything that, as you look ahead, excites you about the future of equine nutraceutical research? Are there any emerging areas or innovations that you think will have a big impact on horse health in the coming years?
If I'm speaking just from myself, I'm getting really excited about this new emerging area of leaky gut syndrome in horses.
Mhm.
I think this is, if you look in the scientific literature, there is exactly 3 publications. 3. So the database that I generally use routinely has 65 million citations in this database. 3 are for leaky gut in horses. And one of them is a review paper that actually reviews literature in non-equine species.
Oh, interesting.
Basically as a wake-up call to say, hey guys, we should really be looking at this, because if you look at the literature in human athletes, for example, it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is really amazing, because it's like getting in at the absolute ground zero level. We know almost nothing.
Yeah, uncharted
Right.
territory.
We know a little bit now,
Yeah.
right? We did publish 2 papers over the last couple of years, and we've got another 2 big projects coming up that are actually already funded now, that we're just waiting for it not to be freezing cold outside before we start doing the experiments. But that's really cool, right? To be involved in something that's really just kind of like waking up, and that we know nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unexplored territory. You get to be pioneers in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. So from that perspective, that's really fun, but that's kind of a selfish personal thing. If we look at it kind of more industry wide, I think one of the really good things that's coming out of our evolution from where we were 25, 30 years ago is that horse owners are starting to ask the right questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're starting to have an awareness of the fact that, okay, sure, you can market to me all you want, but I am a savvy consumer, and I'm going to start asking questions. I want to know, have you done research? I want to know, are you GMP and HACCP certified facility? I want to know what kind of third-party auditing and accountability you build into your business culture. So these kinds of things, I think, are much more prevalent now than they were 20 years ago. And I think if we fast forward to another 20 years, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And my hope is that that's really going to drive a paradigm shift in terms of what consumers are asking for when they go and buy these products. That companies that don't invest in research in their products are going to start being at a market disadvantage.
Absolutely. Yeah. It'll force them to kind of put their money where their mouth is, I guess, so to speak, if they know that that's what their consumers want. That's great. I'm glad that you brought up leaky gut because I think it is such an interesting topic that not a lot of people know anything about or are aware of. So I'm going to have to probably ask you to come back for another podcast one day so you can just talk about leaky gut and all your research in that space. Maybe once that new research hits the ground.
Yeah, that'd be super. I'd love to.
It's time for our famous 3. For more than 20 years, BioOrigin manufactures high-quality yeast-based ingredients through a sustainable biotechnological process, guaranteeing full traceability from the crop to the bowl. Through specialization in the fermentation process, BioOrigin brings the right solution for specific nutritional, palatability, and health appeals, such as gut health, immune system, skin health, weight control, and more. BioOrigin's products are natural origin, non-GMO, and certified sustainable by Bonsucro. BioOrigin is your partner for high-quality, yeast-based ingredients to add value to pet foods worldwide. Learn more at bioorigin.net.
That's great. So before we wrap up today, we always like to end with a few questions just to kind of get to know you a little bit better. So they should be pretty easy questions. But the first question I like to ask is, if you could own any horse, real or fictional, living or non-living, who would it be and why?
So spoiler alert, I did have a time to think about this. And I've decided that I would like to own a horse called Candy. Candy is a little pony. Candy's dead now, by the way. But before Candy was dead, Candy was 56 years old.
Wow.
Had lived her entire life since the day she hit the ground with one owner.
Wow.
And this one owner was a terrifying German lady, but she worshiped the ground that pony walked on. And in the end, the pony had complete free reign. She could walk around wherever she wanted. She could go in her stall, but the stall door was always open. She just wandered around the farm. She was fat and happy and lived to the age of 56.
Wow. Where was this? What country?
Oh, this was here actually. Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
this was here. But yeah, she was amazing. She was an amazing pony, and what a great life she had. With this, I mean, I'm mocking. I say terrifying German lady. She was a little terrifying. I adored her actually.
Well, it's probably terrifying to everyone but the pony if she worshipped that pony's,
Oh my God, the pony was like a dog around her. It
Oh, I
was
love
really,
that. I
really
want a
amazing.
pony like that. Oh, that's great. Perfect. So the second question, do you have a resource or a book that you normally recommend to anyone who might be looking to learn a little bit more about equine nutrition or physiology? Where do you typically send them to?
Okay, equine nutrition. There is a couple of really good books on equine nutrition. The last name of the first author is Lewis. Can't remember the first name. But if you look up Lewis and equine nutrition, there's 2 issues. To my knowledge, there's only 2 issues of this textbook. It's an excellent book, and really gives you the kind of the highlights of what you need to be aware of. I think it's also important to point out that in days where now we're not really using so many textbooks, there are some online resources that are really excellent as well. There's a online ration balancing program that's super easy to use. Any trained monkey can use it, and it really gives you a good idea of kind of where your horse's diet is at, and it'll give you options for how to improve it. So the program is called Feed Excel. And again, this is a company out of Australia, but they've done an absolutely excellent job of creating an online tool that's super user friendly for just the average horse person. And so I think that's also worth a look as well. And Feed Excel, they do lots of master classes in terms of specific topics on equine nutrition that anybody can join. So that's a really excellent resource as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've seen them share some pretty good, informative, like just posts on their Facebook and their social media as well. So I completely agree with that one.
Yeah, and the reason I like them too is that they're not married to a nutrition company, right? Their mandate isn't to sell you feed. Their mandate is to educate you on equine nutrition.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, so they're a great resource.
No, that's great. And then last one. So as a professor who works very closely with students, what's one piece of advice that you would give to students or young professionals who are looking to have a career in equine science, whether that's physiology or nutrition, or whatever their heart desires?
Back when I first came to Canada, I had bought a horse, and I was about 15 at the time when I bought this horse, and a friend of mine down the road from where we lived had a farm. And he asked me one day, this sort of rough, wonderful old farmer guy, and he said, so Wendy, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, oh, I really want to do something with horses. And he said, you're never going to make a living with horses. So you better just change your tack, decide to do something you can actually make a living at. And God bless him. He had the best of intentions in mind. But that is my piece of advice, not to not do it, but to not let someone tell you not to do it, right? If you follow your passion, the money will come. Now, it might not come today or next month or 5 years from now, but people who have this innate passion for horses, you can't get rid of it.
Oh,
Right?
no.
It's not like you can take a pill and you're cured and you go do something else. And at the risk of sounding a little bit strange, we're given these gifts for a reason, right? We're given these gifts because there are our own special, unique things that we can give to our community. And if you invest in that, you will always end up making a good living, right? So I guess my advice is don't let people talk you out of it. You might have to get really creative about what that career looks like, but it's a career that you can do. You just have to chase it.
Yeah. And what a blessing it is to be able to surround yourself with something that you love so much. Like, I always feel so fortunate that I do get to do animal nutrition and pet nutrition and equine nutrition, because I love my pets more than anything. And just thinking about trying to improve their world and the world of other pets through what I do it's such a gift. So I completely agree with you. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight, your knowledge, your expertise, everything with us today. It's been so much fun having you, and it was such a good discussion. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners will as well. And if anyone is looking to hear more about your research, read some of the research that you've done, or connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, all you got to do is jump on the University of Guelph website and put my name in the search bar, and there you are. So feel free to email me at any time. I'm always happy to talk to people.
Perfect. Well, and that concludes another episode of the Pet Food Science Podcast today. So thank you everyone who's listening for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Pearson, for joining us today. And please don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on future episodes. And if there's anyone you would like to see on our podcast, or if you'd like to have Dr. Pearson back to talk about leaky gut, please let us know. Thanks so much. And thank you, Dr. Pearson, again.
Thanks, Alex. That was fun.